Hello and welcome to another edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. In fact, this is another themed edition as it's all Top Gear all the time. Yes, you've probably heard of the little brouhaha, what's been going on over the past several days is actually presenter Jeremy Clarkson has now been put on suspension by the folks over the BBC. Let's give you the high-speed lowdown as I've done a ton of research on this deal over the past several days just to figure out just what exactly took place. Now, apparently these folks were filming over near Yorkshire. Now, there's a small hotel which is called the Simonstone Hall Hotel, actually in North Yorkshire, and this particular hotel was playing host to the staff and the crew for this particular filming exercise that they were doing up there the past several weeks. Now, what apparently had taken place is the filming had gone a tad bit long, at least according to some folks. They had a helicopter on standby who was going to whisk the presenters and some of the staff back to the hotel for a nice meal before the evening to actually start filming again the next day. They actually put together a package with the hotel staff to the hotel restaurant was going to stay open a tad bit later than it normally would, and they were planning on being back at 8 p.m. Well, apparently either filming went a little bit long or a rumor that Mr. Clarkson found a nice little pub that was serving a wine that he really enjoyed, and they held back the helicopter for a couple of hours. Yes, they didn't show up to the hotel till 10 p.m. In the meantime, the hotel staff had gone home for the evening. They were staying late anyway, but then had gone home early, figuring that the group may not be back for a while. Now, they didn't go unattended as the hotel staff had prepared pre-prepared meals for the entire crew and staff, but they were not hot meals. Now, once the helicopter did land back at the hotel, Mr. Clarkson worked up quite a bit of an appetite and really wanted to get his hands on a steak that the hotel was providing. Now, apparently, now that there's nobody on staff to cook this particular steak, that's when the brouhaha started. Mr. Clarkson wanted a hot meal. All they had was cold meals, even though you could get hot soup from the bar inside of the hotel. And that's when the whole brouhaha started. Mr. Clarkson and a certain producer who's been with the show for over 10 years, according to a fella over at yahoo.com who actually wrote a nice little article about his days on staff at Top Gear. Now, he talked about the three presenters as both being very nice, very approachable, and very interesting people. And there were the occasional little bit of raising voices and yelling and screaming, but it was often actually followed almost exclusively by apologizing and saying, hey, I shouldn't have done that. Things like that sometimes in the heat of the moment ends up happening. Apparently that's what this is. Now, some onlookers actually reported that this particular altercation was not on the violent side. Remember when we talked about some punches being thrown and things like this? Apparently that didn't happen. There might have been some light shoving, a light little handbag grabbing and whatnot, and an awful lot of yelling. Apparently Mr. Clarkson unloaded on that producer using every foul word he could think of, at least according to some onlookers. But it wasn't violent as much as somebody said that it was more like a childlike tantrum that Mr. Clarkson was screaming about. He really had his heart set on this steak. He did get the steak in the end, as the proprietor of the hotel actually went back and prepared the steak himself and was served to Mr. Clarkson in a private dining area. Now, this particular situation, as Clarkson actually turned himself into the BBC, but it was after this leaked out to the press, because apparently none of the staff went to the BBC complaining about this situation. It was actually got out into the press and the BBC had to do something. Now, Clarkson was already on his last leg, or his last straw, which is more interesting that the last straw meant that he got suspended rather than fired, which is normally what would happen in this particular situation, because Top Gear is a cash cow. Heard some reports between $50 and $80 million get rolled in by this particular franchise, especially from the outshoots of this. all the other Top Gears, American Top Gear, French Top Gear, Korean Top Gear, Chinese Top Gear, Australian Top Gear, all the other different Top Gears that are run all over the planet. that is just more money to this particular franchise. I've also learned that Jeremy Clarkson and Andy Williams, the executive producer of the show, who are actually old high school and classmates from way back in the day, that actually resurrected this particular franchise and have been running it into where it is now. Apparently they don't have exclusive rights over this. BBC owns the name and owns the actual way the show is run, or at least as far as the way the show is presented on the telly. So it's an interesting little situation. Apparently all three presenters are at the end of their contract at the end of the season 22. And all three of them were offered a 3-year extension by the folks over at the BBC. But apparently, according to some folks, maybe Mr. Clarkson and Mr. Williams have gotten a tad bit bored with this particular show. They were hoping it were going to run 4 or 5 years, and now here it is almost 15 years later, and the show's still rolling strong. And they may want to go out and do something else. Well, apparently there's tons of suitors that would love for that situation to happen. I've already heard reports that ITV has actually been in talks, Sky TV, and even Netflix have been in talks with Andy Williams about resurrecting another show that won't be called Top Gear, but with these 3 chaps at the helm, which obviously would be watched by tons of people all over the world. Now, as far as the Top Gear franchise itself, it will continue to exist because of it being such a cash cow. And chances are, if these 3 guys aren't at the helm, they'll just find 3 more blokes and put them in place. But it probably won't be the same. In fact, it won't be the same. So, interesting situation. It'll be very interesting to see over the next several weeks just what exactly the BBC finds out as they're investigating what goes on in this particular little brouhaha. And hopefully they have something come up very soon. Again, they claim that Mr. Clarkson's in the catbird seat. He was talking about quitting and not mention if they fire him, he was going to be out of a contract anyway at the end of this particular series. So he may just be all good. And the fact that little deal about him just enjoying a pint and waiting for this to blow over, chances are it's exactly what's taking place because Mr. Clarkson lives for that controversy. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. If you want to jump on over to the Facebook page, the link's down in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can do so at any time and get the first dibs on the brand new shows as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again real soon.